All right. Do you want to? All right. Let's do it. Let's do it, Chris.
Yeah, let's do it.
You get 3 takes.
Hey, everybody! Welcome to ExoSquad Goals, a cartoon. Yeah.
And action.
Hey, everybody! Welcome to ExoSquad Goals, a podcast where 3 grown-ass men talk about a children's cartoon called ExoSquad. I'm Chris Mastalone.
I'm Ryan Harnedy.
And I'm Ryan Harnedy. And I'm Chris Ferrantino. Hello, and welcome everybody to ExoSquad Goals.
Hey, guys. So, to begin with, since this is the first time we've ever recorded this, ever, let's talk about for a second, like, what is ExoSquad? Because, like, this is a cartoon that probably no one's ever seen, and this is a podcast that no one's ever heard or will hear. What is it? It was a cartoon in the 90s. It was like an American anime thing. It was by Universal Studios, and it ran for basically a year. I know I used to watch it after school after like Animaniacs, so that was like my thing. It'd be like super funny. Then like people getting crazily blown up in the sci-fi thing. What's it mean to like you guys, you know?
Yeah, so I actually got into it. Funny story. We were living with my grandparents at the time, and as a little kid, I would wake up in the middle of the night and like from nightmares and like go hang out with my grandma who was up, and we would watch like Nick and Night and like different shows. But she would always let me watch ExoSquad because it was on at like 4:00 in the morning on the Fox affiliate. So my grandparents like they would let me watch it in their room when my parents didn't. So I thought that was pretty solid.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally got into it like after school. It's fascinating. It's a cartoon show because it's incredibly complicated and rich and layered and detailed and gets into so many really profound topics. And it's sort of allegorical for World War II and like the Reconstruction period in American history. And when you're in 8th grade or so, or whatever, middle school, whatever year it was. Probably, it's actually, which is weird. Sorry, this is a divergence, but it aired from 93 to 94, so I would have been in third grade, 4th grade.
That was the first one. Then it was on, like, syndication for almost like a decade, so...
Yeah, so I must have seen it in syndication, and it really sort of touched on a lot of really interesting themes, and unlike a lot of cartoons that you watch, like, it really kind of delves deeply into things like, racism and prejudice, war themes.
But that's the big thing too, is that it's got this like really, really heavy shit going on, right? Where it's like the basic premise, and we'll get into it in a minute, it's like a genetically bred race of slave people rise up, get put down brutally, then they do it again later, and they're the bad guys. Something that complex probably went over the head of a lot of like 7-year-olds when it first aired.
Right, but it sort of exists in this sort of moral gray area. Where the people you're rooting for, you kind of feel morally complicated about that. And the good guys aren't all good and the bad guys aren't all bad. And I think it's a much more, when you're young and you're coming home from school and you don't have a ton of friends, like this is sort of a world you can kind of get lost in. And, it really captures the imagination, as John Hammond would say.
Now back to Exo
Now that we've kind of talked about a little bit of like what the show was, and like, I mean, it was like such a crazy thing because like when you're a kid, I watched Animaniacs, and that's like the silliest show you could think of, and then you go to a show right after it that's like you said, World War II show that talks about racism, has some like crazy gender stuff, and people like legit get killed, which was not done in American cartoons in the 90s.
Yeah, like up until ExoSquad, ejector seats in cartoons worked 100% of the time. Like everyone always ejected.
Right. It was cartoons were safe places, and this was like, a much more dark world that was not safe, and you never knew who was going to live and die each episode. So that was very different and very.
Yeah,
cool.
It's kind of interesting to see that, like, for our generation, like, a lot of the TV shows that were a touchstone for us were, like, Battlestar Galactica and things like that, where it has that same dynamic where you're not sure who's going to live, who's going to die. And, as a kid, you see that sort of seed being planted in a show like this, where there was nothing safe about it, especially in this first season where you're like, who's the main character? I don't know. So let's talk about this first episode, because, you figure with a lot of shows, the first episode is where you got to set the stage and build it. You think it's going to be this crazy action-packed thing, and this kind of isn't.
It's really, there's, a lot that happens in it, and there's a lot that doesn't happen in it. So, what's really important to know is that this is a serialized cartoon show. So it's telling one story over 52 episodes, which is, in itself a very cool format. It's not, like Animaniacs, which every episode was sort of different and nothing changed really between episodes, but you could pick up anywhere in the season. This has had a linear progression to it, which I think is pretty cool.
It reminded me a lot of, I was talking to someone about like Netflix and like Hulu culture, and it's like now, like I'll put in like 4 or 5 episodes before deciding a show isn't for me. Whereas like when I was a kid and TV was just on, like if I watched one bad episode, like I was just done. And it's interesting to see that they did a show where the pilot is like almost all like setting up the story. Like there really isn't that much like action in the beginning of the first episode.
Yeah, so for those people who haven't seen it,
so everyone,
why are you listening to this podcast?
Why are you listening to this podcast?
Yeah, your children need you.
Hey, Mom.
Because you know us. So it's a cartoon space opera that takes place in the 22nd century. So it's in the future. And in the future, humans have kind of terraformed Venus and made it into this beautiful farming planet and tried to terraform Mars and have made it into a mining planet. And the environment on Mars is so harsh that the only way to kind of colonize it was to very smartly breed a race of creatures called Neo-Sapiens, which are just like people, but they're bigger, stronger, smarter. They have 2 thumbs on their hands. They're blue or purple. They're just better in every way. And so humans had the idea to enslave the Neo-Sapiens and make them work in the environment of Mars.
A race of workers bred to thrive in these harsh climates sought to overthrow their human masters.
Of course, the Neo-Sapiens revolt and there's a big fight between the humans and the Neo-Sapiens, and the humans win the fight because they've invented E-frames or exoframes, which are these big metal contraptions you wear around your body, and they put down the rebellion. And the show takes place 50 years after this, and we're all introduced to all of this in this tremendous news broadcast by intrepid reporter Charles McKenna, who is just one of the most hated characters on
Literally
the show.
The first time they introduce him, it's like he does his report, then it's like, ugh, that guy's the worst.
This is Charles McKenna.
Can't stand that guy.
Yeah, and that's how it opens. So there's a whole lot of history there, and that history kind of gets played out through every episode of the show, because there's a deep-seated resentment between humans and Neo-Sapiens. Neo-Sapiens are having been enslaved by the people, and the people, for being really kind of annoyed that the Neo-Sapiens decided they wanted to be free. So, again, that's where all of this complication
And this
exists.
is, what, the first 2 minutes of the episode? They just dump all this on you as a kid?
Yeah, this broadcast this sort of backstory is revealed to be a broadcast by Charles McKenna that's being watched on this long-distance space freighter that's going into deep space, and they're not going to see anybody for 4 days, and they're watching this news broadcast.
Okay, so with the freighter, what's the? Do you know the name of the thing? It had like some crazy name.
It's like the
Danube or something?
Yeah, the Danube. You have these 2 guys, and they're like, hey, we're going to be alone for 3 days. So what's the other guy do? Just pops on his space porn, which is like a Game Boy that's projecting a dancing girl. And again, cartoon for kids. Guy's just totally looking at a space porn girl that's like playing the Mario Brothers like dungeon music. And then the pirates attack. And it gets fucking nuts.
Yeah, so there's this there's this pirate attack, and we kind of leave off there, where we meet our heroes, the ExoSquad, which are sort of the main characters. What's their company name?
They're
Ryan?
the Flight 1 Able Squad.
Yeah, so they're like the best of the best pilots of these, now second generation exoframes, which are these, mechanical spacesuits that they fly around. So we meet them joyriding through the canyons of Mars, and there's JT Marsh, who's the captain of the group, Rita Torres, who's the sergeant, Alec De Leon, who's
He's like the intelligence
intel
guy,
operator. Yeah, Maggie Weston, who's the tech officer, Wolf Bronsky, who is the big lumbering, kind of drunk veteran of the group, Kaz Takagi, who's the rookie ace pilot. There's Nara Burns, who's this kind of sweet-faced, innocent character, and her partner Marsala, and they're the only 2 who are in a 2-seater, and everyone else is in these 1-seater aircraft. And they're kind of joyriding around, and they go back to their ship, and they get scolded for joyriding when the call comes in that this space freighter's in trouble. So then they get on a shuttle ship and go out to the space freighter.
Lieutenant Marsh, you'll take your squad in a boarding shuttle as a search and rescue party. I want that ship secured ASAP.
So then they go off and they find this space freighter which has been damaged, and there's a work crew that's going to come and salvage the ship. And they get on and they see that everyone's dead on the ship. Everyone's been killed. And there's a recording, and they find out that it's pirates who killed everybody. And somewhere in the distance there's a stirring, and the guy that was watching the porn video game is kind of alive. So Takagi goes over to help him and sets off a booby trap, and the whole thing's going to blow up in classic space opera tradition in 10 seconds. So they have some amount of time. They get off the ship. They bolted out of there. They can't contact the space freighter because the connection's down, so they go across its bow, and it finally turns. The shuttle blows up, and the blast of the shuttle kills everybody on the space freighter. So we're 5 minutes in the cartoon, and we've had 7 to 10 people are dead, just straight up dead. And then the ExoSquad goes back. Charles McKenna shows up.
Charles McKenna, HBC News.
He's like, why did everyone die?
I was told it was your squad's action aboard the Danube that started this war.
I would have said it was the pirates' action that started it.
That's what I'm here for. Your side of the story. I understand it was one of your men who cost that work crew their lives.
He's investigated. There's people want answers, like how did the ExoSquad, this elite group, cause this accident that killed these people? It turns out it was the pirates. The space UN gets together. There's, the very effeminate man who doesn't want to go to war. Then there's the very masculine people who do want to go to war, led by Phaeton, who is the governor, who's the Neo-Sapien governor of Mars.
Wait! Has anyone forgotten what war is like? I say negotiate with these people!
Mr. Secretary General, may I be heard? Let the fleets be gathered into a great armada, then sent to root out and destroy the pirate scourge once and for all.
Yes, send in the Exo Fleet! It's time they earn their keep!
And they fly out with these huge armada of ships to go destroy the pirates. They're out in deep space. The pirates are cloaked, and that's their thing. And they uncloak and attack all the Exo carriers and all of our good guys, and that's sort of where the episode stops.
Yeah, dude.
Nailed it!
Is that what happened?
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure. I blacked out there. What happened?
Yeah, you went to a fugue state and suddenly you woke up on Mars.
Yeah.
So that's the longest I'm ever going to do, because I think there's a lot of backstory, but that's...
Yeah, no, and especially, that's one where it's just, this, again, this is our first episode, so it's once we get through this, now we can actually talk about the episode, because holy crap, there's a lot that goes on in this thing.
Yeah. You did also go through 300 years of human history in 10 minutes, so that's pretty cool. I'm down with that.
Yeah, you would have been a great AP history teacher.
Boom.
So, what did you guys think of this episode? What did you like about it?
So I watched it in two minds. One is as an adult watching it, and then one is remembering it, watching it as a kid. So I liked. I think it sets up the plot really well, and I think it does a really good job of establishing what this world looks like and how it works on a child level, or 32-year-old man level. They don't do. They give you they only give you two really good here are the toys you can have your parents buy scenes, which is when they're heading to Olympus Mons, and then when they all land, you're because they land in toy order, which is pretty. Which as a kid I was well, that's convenient. And it did have Charles McKenna and his weird, overly invasive camera bot, who are two of my favorite characters in the series and in animation.
My friends call me Charlie.
Well, McKenna, what are you looking for in our mess hall?
Yeah, so if you want to think of Charles McKenna, think of in Ninja Turtles, how April O'Neil was super loved and a key part of the team, and her news reports would if there was something going on, they could get help, they could do all this stuff. Charles McKenna's the polar opposite of that in every single way.
Can I say that I love that your reference for a news reporter is not a real news reporter, but a cartoon news reporter?
I mean...
Not think of Anderson Cooper or Dan Rather. It's no, think
yeah.
April O'Neil.
Yeah.
Who's the best news reporter I can think of?
He has like an Anderson Cooper vibe with like a Piers Morgan level of charisma. It's like a really interesting character.
Yeah, he's this investigative journalist that nobody seems to have invited and is constantly interrogating the Exo fleet, which is a very cool thing that there's this media aspect to this war that's going to be happening, and also that in the future nobody likes reporters.
Just by that thing alone, you get the sense like there's a much bigger world than like the exocarrier Resolute is in this asteroid field. It's like, no, there are people at home that are going to be watching this news report and knowing how the war is going. And like Nara Burns sends a video postcard back to her family being like, hey, we're deploying, I miss you guys, nothing's more beautiful than home, I might not survive. And you're like, wow, they're like stakes. They're people that care about this person that are going to be seeing this on the news and being like, oh my god, what's going on?
What do you think of Nara Burns? Like, I feel like she becomes one of the more interesting characters throughout the show. What's your thoughts?
She's kind of like a 15-year-old that is in the army. Like, she has a teddy bear. Everything about her is like super young. Like, she's the innocent one. You know what I mean? Especially at first, and actually always kind of.
It's like everyone represents a certain kind of trope, right?
Yeah.
They're sort of.
I always thought of her because she's also like one thing they harp on a couple times, that she's also a lieutenant. I always thought she like went to college and like went to like Exofleet ROTC to pay for it. So she like didn't really sign up, because they mention a couple times that the military's not in use. Like, the military is an artifact of the past. So like she signed up not expecting anything to happen. And then once the whole fleet starts up, she's like suddenly in this extremely rough situation that like she wasn't prepared for, which I think is great when she kind of becomes one of the more interesting POV characters, because she, as we'll see later on, like she has a lot to lose, like personally in the war.
Well, we're 700 million miles from Venus, so it'll take over an hour for this videogram to get to you. And by that time, I may be, well, I'll be in action. I just wanted you all to know how much I miss you and our farm. I know you didn't want me to join the Exo fleet, but it's given me a chance to travel all over the solar system. I've seen things I never would have seen, learned things I never would have known, and now I know there's nothing more beautiful than the sun when it breaks through the clouds of Venus.
And also, I mean, she's paired with, so her co-pilot, Masala, is, he's a Neo-Sapien, and he's like one of the few, and like there's like a nurse, maybe. He's like one of two in the Exo fleet. And, you see a lot of times there's a lot of tension that goes on. Like when they're joyriding through Mars, they're like, oh, the Sapes don't like it here. And they show up and they're like, they're hostile. They're trespassing. They get shot at. It's not like everyone's happy about, this whole relationship still. And it's been 50 years.
There's two really important things there, which are that Marsala is a Neo-Sapien who's joined the Exo fleet. So there's, instantly there's this, is he betraying his side? How do they feel about it? And then you're right, like there's not only tension between humans and Neo-Sapiens, there's tension between people and the Exo fleet. Like the populace does not seem to like the Exo fleet. They seem to be, as Ryan said, like an artifact of the past where, they're fat and lazy and there's been no wars. Like, this is a golden age for mankind is how the episode begins.
The Earth knew no hunger, no want.
So people resent them. The Neo-Sapiens and the humans don't like each other. And here we have this sort of, Exo fleet with a Neo-Sapien, and everyone's kind of comes from these different backgrounds. Like, Bronsky is this character who doesn't really necessarily have a lot of complication in him. I think what you said about Nara is so interesting about her being like the one who went to college, who's both innocent, but also probably the smartest one, and probably for whom she has the most to lose and has, the most complicated feelings about all this stuff.
She seems to be the most like introspective too. Like, aside from like occasional scenes, like whenever they need someone to question reality or question like the war, it's almost always Nara who does it, and then JT is the guy who like provides like the context.
Yeah, and like, can we just talk about Bronsky for a second?
Literally all of the time. But before this starts, I should say a disclaimer. Wolf Bronsky is my favorite character in the history of animation, so it might be a little biased, but he rules.
Okay, people, fall in. Come on, move it. Can the chatter and get in line. Lieutenant Marsh has a few words.
Thank you, Sergeant. Stand easy, troopers.
Thanks, JT.
He's great. He's this, like, everyone else in the squad is wearing this really form-fitting flight suit armor things. They have abs, shoulder pads. They look like they could handle themselves in a fight. And Bronsky's this, like, he's redheaded, right? Kind of red-brown.
Yeah. He has like auburn hair and like a permanent like 10 o'clock shadow.
And he's like wearing a leather jacket, and he's fucking like fat and gross and a slob, and he loves fighting, he loves killing people and drinking, and that's it. And
this episode has one of my favorite lines, which is when they're like getting ready to attack the freighter. JT Marsh is like, "Stay tight, like things might get nasty in there." And then Bronsky's like, "Nothing nastier than Wolf Bronsky," and then burps inside his spacesuit.
At the ready, Wolf. I don't want to be surprised by anything nasty on the other side.
Ain't nothing nastier than Wolf Bronsky.
I believe it.
Like, not in the air. Like, he has a helmet on and just, like, rips it. And also, his exo frame, a lot of them are, like, kind of articulated and have, like, it's just 2 giant Gatling guns attached to, like, a torso.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it rules. And,
it's like, he's the tank, you know?
Yeah.
Like, he is the giant
literally
fat guy.
his exo frame is like if you took 3 barrels and stuck them together, then put legs on it, that's him.
You kind of half expect them to be kegs, and it to be like, Bronsky, take the shot! Bronsky! And he's like, well, I can't, I've got kegs.
Yeah.
And I've been drinking from them.
Sorry, JT, I gotta empty these kegs. And then...
Him and JT have some good moments together, though, like, a couple times, because they're, like, the older hands. Because they say a couple times that he's, like, the oldest trooper in the fleet. So he's, I always like to think that he's, like, seen things. That, like, he's not just like that.
Yeah, he's seen the bottom of a glass a couple of times.
So, yeah, and then JT's, like, this career officer who's been... I don't know.
Yeah,
he spent his whole life in the Exo fleet. He's going to become Admiral Winfield, who is the head of the Exo fleet. That's like his trajectory. Like, I don't think Nara's going to stay. You know, it's not for her in the long run. And Bronsky's like a lifer, but we'll probably have to resign due to drunkenness,
due to war crimes done in a drunken haze. But you have like
he's Lieutenant Dan.
Yeah. The other 3 are like, you know, Maggie Weston and Rita Torres are like no nonsense. You know, they're very professional. Same with DeLeon. Like, they're, you know, he's like the intelligence guy, and he's just like, he doesn't say much, except, you know, he'll be like, his job is just to announce when the bad guys show up half the time.
There are some badass ladies in this show, I should say.
Oh,
that.
hell yeah.
And I think if you're, like, the way gender is represented in this show is very, I think, progressive for its time, but also probably any time. Like, I don't know. Like, what do you guys make of Torres and Weston? Kind of as a counterpoint to Nara in a way.
Well, also, like, Torres is as unprofessional as Bronsky is. Torres is just, like, on point. I mean, is it her or is it Weston that has her exoframe kind of looks like Ripley's exoskeleton in Alien?
That's Weston.
Yeah, that's Maggie's. She's the mechanic.
Torres has a laser sword on her exoframe that she has to, like, punch spaceships with. Like, she can't, like, Bronsky stands in the back and shoots off his Gatling guns, and she has to go up and, like, right in your face and punch you in the head with her laser sword.
Yeah.
Which is kind of badass. I don't know how else
Torres is, like, unreal how badass she is. You know, her right arm is like a giant cannon. Her left arm has, like, a giant laser sword. That's a no-nonsense E-frame right there, you know what I mean? Like...
Yeah, like, they're almost androgynous in a way. I don't know, like, everybody's haircuts are all incredibly futuristic.
Can we talk about the hair for a second?
Yeah.
Sure.
So everyone has the same hair in the future, guys. And it's all a high and tight with vanilla ice stripes in the back.
Well, like, part of your hair will be shaved. Part of your head will be shaved. It doesn't matter. I don't know. Everyone depends on who they are. We meet a bartender later, but, like, everyone's got some sort of long and short going on.
When they're lined up, because they get chewed out by what's his name, the captain,
Captain Marcus, who we have to talk about.
Yeah,
that guy is so high tea, like.
Lieutenant Marsh, how good of you and Lieutenant Burns to join us.
Sorry, sir. When the alarm came, I was leading my squad in some flight exercises.
Oh, really? You know the standing orders against joyriding. The Neo-Sapiens don't appreciate it. Just who authorized this flight?
Actually, Captain Marcus, I did.
Okay, so we got the two commanders of the fleet are Captain Marcus and Admiral Winfield. And Winfield is very much like, he's the old steady hand. He knows what to do when. He's seen it all. And Marcus is this, like, southern... What do you call him, Chris? Like he's a southern gentleman fighter. He's
very ready to go fight. He's like Orlando Bloom in any movie. He's like really eager to go and fight. And Winfield's probably like a man of letters, and Marcus just has this thing about him, which is like this kind of southern gentleman's accent that's got a little bit of an Alabama drawl lisp to it. And he's, so when the pirates attack, he's like, we've got to destroy the pirates.
But, he also works for the Exo fleet, but appears to hate exoframes. Like, every time they're, like, getting ready to go, he's like, we should just use the fleet. Just the big ships.
All vessels, hold defensive formation.
Captain, launch the E-frames.
They'll just get in the way of our field of fire.
But they're called exo carriers. He's like, shut down the E-frames. We just need the exo fleet. And then Captain Marcus, who's like or Admiral Winfield, who's like the cool dad that like lets you get drunk in the house as long as you're being safe, is like, no, launch the E-frames too. Which, when you watch the show, like, one E-frame blows up, like, 6 carriers. Like, it's crazy.
Marcus he missed the strategy part of War College. It's like, we should go around the sides. Like, I think we should go right up the middle. It seems that they have not been defending the middle. Yeah. We should attack the middle. And then they go up the middle every time. And they're like, I don't know what happened. It was the E-frame's fault. He's very quick to blame everybody else.
He's always, like, wrong. He always sucks up to Admiral Winfield, who always just like lets it go. Like,
it's like Winfield's never in the room until the last minute, and then Winfield shows up. Oh, Winfield, I didn't know you were here.
I love the idea too that like the one guy who hates E-frames and the whole fleet is the guy who seems directly in charge of them all the time. And it's just like, why? Who thought of this? Who put this guy in charge? This is a bad idea.
Everyone's dead, Marcus. Yeah, well, they cheated, so not my fault.
He also seems to love Admiral Winfield, but always disobeys him every single time. Admiral Winfield's like, all right, get the E-frames ready to launch. And he's like, great. And then when Admiral Winfield's away, he's like, shut down the E-frames. But he's always up in JT Marsh's face. He's mad all of the time. He's the man.
Yeah, no, he's awesome. He's like one of the best. He's just so great. And just like, you just see him sipping a mint julep, reading books about like battleships and being like, this is the way of the future. And it's just like, nope, not quite.
It's like Winfield is like, I don't know, it's like Robert E. Lee, and Marcus is like any drunk Southern guy who joined the Confederacy. It's like, I'm gonna go kill me some Union men. Where are they? Forward, attack, stab. Who are you? And he's like, no, let's think about this for a minute. We're in space. Yeah. We can't just do what you want to do.
One thing that's crazy about this episode too is that like it's pretty clear if you were listening to this episode, I don't know how you got here, but you just take the extra step and watch an episode, and then within 2 seconds you'll figure out that the Neo-Sapiens are the bad guys. It's pretty obvious, but they're not like talked about that much aside from like the news report, and Phaeton is like, yes, let's go to war. The pirates are the bad guys in this. That's a really interesting thing. As like a kid, you're like watching this show, you've probably seen some commercials. There's some guy named Simbaka with crazy facial hair and an awesome accent.
We must hit them while they are vulnerable. Signal the clans. Prepare to break from cloaking mode and attack on my command. Take no prisoners.
And it's like, oh, he's the villain? Like, I don't get this.
Oh yeah, like we know the pirates are the pirates because they have facial hair. The Exo fleet does not have facial hair. The pirates they get all the crazy facial hair.
And I love their belt buckles are like just giant skulls and crossbones.
Yeah, they took being pirates like too seriously.
Yeah.
Like, guys, we're pirates, so get all the piratey stuff. It's like, it's space. It's a clean...
They seem to be like wearing pirate like Halloween costumes, but with jumpsuits. Like everyone is like, they're like Peter Pan pirates, and they say R and like...
Yeah, that's how they became pirates, is that they raided a pirate Halloween store. They were just like outcasts before that. We're the outcasts. We need an identity. Let's raid the Halloween store.
It's a golden age for mankind. Costume parties have spread throughout the solar system. People dressed like slutty nurses throughout the asteroid belt.
You know everything's good because everyone's drinking cocktails outside.
Oh yeah.
There's some good smaller parts that the people on Mars, the humans on Mars, were wearing like cutoff shorts and no shirts, and that's how you farm Mars is like in your cutoffs.
It's a very 90s like idealized vision of the future.
Wait, can we talk about one thing real quick? They bred the Neo-Sapiens to work on Mars because it was too brutal for humans. Yet half the humans you see on Mars are like in surfer gear.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like later on you see the humans have to wear like respirators and they can't stay outside very long. But yeah, watching this one, it struck me that like, yeah, the humans are just like wearing like boots and cutoffs and like, you know, sneaking kisses.
Yeah, Space Daisy Dukes.
Exactly. But it's an interesting vision of the future of the things that destroy our utopia are the same things that always have, right? They're other people.
Yeah.
it's you know, it's prejudice, it's racism, it's otherness. Those, you know, it's people not being able to get along with
for
each
real.
other.
You know, we talked for a bit about this episode, but you know, I think we should probably start to wrap it up a little bit. Watching this episode, who would you say is your MVP of the episode?
I'm gonna give it to Charles McKenna because he sets the whole thing up, and he does the mechanic of him like he like is all up in there. The other thing too is he appears to have like top secret access, but everyone is always mad when he shows up. Like he walks right up to Maggie and is like, "Hey, what's going on?" And she's just like, "Shut the fuck up. I am busy doing that cartoon thing where you just weld it, like you're just pointing a blowtorch at something and that's like fixing something." Yeah. So I'm going to give it to McKenna.
I'm down with that one. I agree. He's everyone's least favorite guy, but he's so important for the plot and setting things up.
I have two quick ones. One is De Leon, because there's a point in which he's like doing cartwheels and pretending to shoot his gun, and Takagi and Bronski are watching him, and Takagi goes, "Hey Bronski, check out those moves."
Wow, check those moves, Bronski.
Big deal. Some guys need to practice.
And all he's just doing are these like one-handed cartwheels. And then my favorite character probably in the whole show is the guy that works for Simbaka, who's the head pirate. But there's like Simbaka just stands in the back, and then there's the guy that works the controls of the spaceship, who's got this little pencil-thin mustache, who's always trying to like, "I can't do it, Simbaka. I'm trying. You know, he's the guy who Simbaka's always yelling at.
Admiral Simbaka, the enemy fleet has slowed to navigate the asteroids. Our cloaking shields are all operational. They cannot see us.
Is there a shot in the show where Simbaka doesn't have his like hands on his hips, like arms out, posing? Like, I feel like he's always doing that shit, and that guy is, like you said, he's like, "No, Simbaka, there are too many of them. We must leave now."
He's like the Sulu Chekhov character, and he's just always, I don't know, he's my all-time favorite character in the show.
Before we go, though, I do have to shout out one extra guy, one runner-up. So, like, I want to shout out the guy when they're in the Space UN, and they're discussing like what to do about the pirates. The one weenie guy's like, "No, we should negotiate."
Wait! Negotiate!
And then when Phaeton talks about like fighting, the one dude just slams his fist on the table, which like in cartoons, weenies negotiate, men slam fists on tables. Also, and my double runner-up to the. We were talking about gender earlier. I believe the lady who runs the Space UN is a woman too.
Oh yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah,
There's like one of the really interesting things about this is like traditional gender roles seem like a thing of the past. You know what I mean? Where it's like everyone's seen as equals in ability and role, which is like awesome.
Totally. Yeah, the second command, like Nara is a lieutenant, and the second in command is Rita. So
who has a knife on her arm?
Straight up laser knife.
Yeah. Well, guys, you know, the second episode in the show is called The Seeds of Deception, which that'll hopefully be up in a week.
And if you want to advertise with ExoSquad goals, send an email to ryan.harnedy@gmail.com with your PayPal information, and I'll just bill you from there.
Actually, this is how legit we are, guys. we have the Gmail address, exosquadgoals@gmail.com. So,
Oh, that's awesome.
Which will be checked once a
Don't
month.
send any important emails there or anything that makes me feel bad about myself. So yeah, just praise. We are 3 grown men commenting on a cartoon show, so like, awesome.
All right, let's call it an episode. We have 52 of these to do.
Yeah. Okay, so for Exo Squad Gold, I'm Chris Mathalone.
I'm Ryan Harney.
And I'm Chris Vanderbilt.
You got any heroes in this company?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Woo!
We'll sync that up later.
Yeah, I'll fix that in post.
Yeah. and make me sound like Jean-Claude Van Damme in Bloodsport.
No, I'm gonna put the Captain Marcus filter on all of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
See you next time when the war continues.
I didn't get into the Exo fleet to work on Exo frames.
I get the E frame, I get the Exo carrier, but because like the Exo thing's got only go so far, right?
I assume there are ships that don't have Exo in the name.
I hope so.
These are my exo glasses. Sir, those are just called glasses. It's my exo sweater.
Can I get the
vest.
Exo burger with extra Exo fries?
You have to pay $1 for extra Exo avocado.
My exo.
Extra Exo is extra.
Have you tried the Exo sauce? It's excellent.